Yes.
No, I can't.
Okay.
You want me to?
Yeah, let me move this up here. It's going to be part of the presentation.
That's perfect.
I bring props, okay? Okay, good. So, now that everybody can see me and hear me, my name is Matt Kaplan. I'm an attorney with Hildebrand Law Firm. We do estate planning, we do probate, we do family law, we do a whole bunch of fun stuff. I got introduced to Terry because Terry had a friend who came and did his estate planning with us, and Terry was just so blown away by estate planning and all that really interesting and fun stuff that he said, you know what, Matt, come do this for all my clients. So I said, Terry, nothing I'd rather do on a Saturday morning than to be the only Jew at a church talking about estate planning for your clients. Of course. So, here I am, and I'm ecstatic to be with all you guys. Let's talk about the name of the presentation is The Power of Preparedness, a tale of planning versus procrastination. And in case you're wondering, the answer is yes. I got that title off of ChatGPT. I did not come with it by myself, but this does tell a lot of what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a whole bunch of definitions about estate planning. So if you've already done this stuff, then raise your hand and answer my questions and we'll move along a lot quicker. If you haven't already done this stuff, hopefully you learn a whole bunch. After we go over some definitions, we're going to go over the story of two people, Paul the planner and Wendy the waiter. So you can see one person who does everything and plans everything out, one person who doesn't. And we can see how things diverge. So, let me talk a little bit about us. Hildebrand Law Firm has been around for about 21, 22 years. I always joke with my boss, who is about 20 years older than me, that when she started the firm in her late 20s, I was studying for my bar mitzvah. She loves to hear that. I had just gotten into 8th grade, and she started the law firm. I was studying Torah, she was studying torts. She loves hearing that. Our team, we have about 5 attorneys, 10 support staff. Our attorneys all have very diverse backgrounds. I went to the University of Dayton School of Law. We have attorneys that went to Marquette, Madison, Michigan State, all over. Big thing, affiliations. One of the affiliations that we're part of, which I'm really proud of, is an affiliation called Lawyers with Purpose. And it's a national organization, lawyers, accountants, financial advisors in all 50 states. We all get together twice a year and we talk about estate planning, any updates to the law, any updates to policies, and we all share tips and tricks with each other on how we can maximize the best results for our clients. So if you have a relative, you have a friend that is outside of the state of Wisconsin, let me know. I can refer you to someone. I know we all speak the same language in that. So, but a little bit about me, why I personally do things. This is a picture of me and my father in his favorite place in the world, which is Palm Springs, California. My father passed away in 2015, my second year of law school. It was really difficult for me because at the time, him and my mom had split up, we were separated, and I was living with him. I grew up in upstate New York. My mom moved to Florida, so it was just me and him. Then found out he died, and he had nothing in place. No will, no trust, no powers of attorneys, nothing. And to make matters even worse, which is kind of a funny thing, his best friend, a guy named Erwin, an estate planning attorney. I call Erwin to let him know. Erwin, with his New York sense of humor, says, you know, I wish your father was still alive so that I could kill him for what he did to you. And so I know what I went through, what me and my brother went through, dealing with my mom, who is kind of a pain in the butt. You'll hear a little bit more about her today during the presentation. But she's difficult. Thankfully, she wasn't incredibly difficult, or else it would have been a long, drawn-out procedure. But just knowing what we went through, I want to make sure that none of you go through that. And I want to make sure that if anything happens to you, and you have children, and you have loved ones, none of your children or loved ones have to go through what we went through. So, let's move on. Agenda. We're going to overview some important definitions. We're going to go over the story of Paul and Wendy. We're going to discover how to avoid any mistakes that they made, and then we're going to close. But first of all, I gave you all folders. If you can open up those folders real quick. On one side of the folder, so on the left side of the folder, it's going to have a ton of information about estate planning in general. So there's going to be The first page is going to be a big overview of estate planning, and then every page after that there's going to be just some one-sheets on each topic. So if after you leave here you go, oh, you know what, Matt said something really funny and interesting about irrevocable trusts. What was that? There's a one-pager on irrevocable trusts, and revocable trusts, and wills, and other things. So that's on that side. On the other side, there's going to be some information about the firm. There's also going to be a few different documents. One of them is going to be a goldenrod form. That's the evaluation form. So if you could please fill that out at the end of the presentation for me, that'd be great. And then also you can leave some information there where if you want to go over things more specifically for you and your family. Just by coming here today, if you do want to go over things more specifically, I figure if I'm taking an hour of your time, you can come take an hour of my time. I'm not going to charge you for any initial consultation. And in that consultation, I want to go over your assets, your family situation, but mainly I want to go over what your goals and concerns are so that we can try to help address them. So that'll be the goldenrod evaluation form. Also in your folder, there'll be a couple of other things. One of the things is going to be an FAQ sheet, which you will find. The FAQ sheet will talk about asset protection trusts, which is a type of an irrevocable trust. The reason why I include that sheet in there is because a lot of the presentation, a lot of the story of Paul and Wendy is going to revolve around this specific type of trust. A lot of people don't have a ton of experience with these types of trusts. A lot of people have a lot of questions with these types of trusts. They may have read something online, or they have a friend who goes, oh no, you don't need that, that's crazy, you're nuts. We call that the coffee shop and the beauty shop rules. I'm sure you hear from your friends, and your friends text you all the time. Oh yeah, I read this one article, and now I'm an expert, right? So my brother did. When I was in law school, my brother goes, well, I watch Law & Order SVU all the time, so am I just as smart as you are? I said, no, you're better. So, we call that just enough to be dangerous. A lot of people know just enough to be dangerous, just enough to give people advice that turns out to be wrong. So that's why that FAQ sheet is really important. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. But that FAQ sheet should be really helpful. And then a final thing that's in there that I want to point out is there's going to be a grid. And on that grid, it's going to be in landscape form. That grid is going to show that it's going to be used during the story of Paul and Wendy. Okay? So don't spoil it for yourselves now. Bring that out once I go over the story. Okay? So let's get a little bit into some definitions. First definition I want to talk about is Medicaid. Anyone in here familiar with Medicaid? Excellent. I know we've talked about Medicare. Here's what's confusing. Medicare and Medicaid sound almost identical. They do different things. It is very confusing and it is very annoying. But the way that I use Medicaid and the way that I work with Medicaid is paying for long-term care.
Yes.
People here, are you at least familiar with this, that this program exists? At least some people.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So for those of you who aren't, what Medicaid does is Medicaid will pay for your long-term care if you can afford it. Which, anyone want to guess how much the average cost of a nursing home is in the state of Wisconsin as of this year? Anyone want to just throw out a number?
$12,000 a month.
Very good, very, very good. Not necessarily, but that's the number I like to use is $12,000. Any other guesses?
That sounds about right.
If you thought in your head $308.71 a day, you'd be correct. $9,200 a month is the average cost this year for a nursing home in the state of Wisconsin. $12,000, that's the real average cost in my opinion. Most of the time people are going to nursing homes, they're going for maybe a memory care issue, they have dementia, something like that. Then you're looking at $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. If I'm paying $14,000, I'm not experiencing winter 8 months out of the year. I never understood that.
Amen. Come on.
Put me in a place in Florida. Like, no, I'm not dealing with winter ever again if I'm paying that much.
Me too.
So, but Medicaid as a program, in order to get into it, you have to functionally qualify and financially qualify. So, what is financial qualification? Who in here is married? Raise your hand if you're married. Okay. And then not married, so widow, single, divorced. Okay, good. So the rules for married people and not married people, drastically different. The rules for single people could probably fit on one page, and the rules for married people take up the other 649 pages of the Medicaid handbook. So, yeah. It's a scintillating read. I'll send you guys all the link. So the qualifications are completely different. For a single person, anyone want to guess how much money you're allowed to have in your personal name to qualify for Medicaid? And you just want to throw in a number?
$2,000.
$2,000. Ding, 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 ding. You're correct. $2,000 you can have in your personal name in order to qualify for Medicaid. Notice I said $2,000 in your personal name.
That's right.
That'll come up in the story a lot later, but just remember that in your personal name. So, let's talk about functional qualification. You have to functionally qualify because if you don't need care, what the heck are you going to a nursing home for? So, functional qualification, there are 6 activities of daily living, also known as ADLs. In order to functionally qualify, you have to fail 2 out of the 6 or have dementia.
Right.
Those 6 activities are dressing yourself, walking, going from sitting to standing, bathing, feeding, and using the toilet, or dementia to catch all. So you fail 2 out of the 6, you qualify. You have dementia, you qualify. What does Medicaid actually do? Medicaid picks up the rest of the tab. You have Social Security, you have a pension, that goes right to the nursing home. You have under that $2,000 in your personal name, Medicaid kicks in and they say, we'll pick up the rest of the tab. And we already got to that dollar amount. The reason that Medicaid exists, and the big point I want to get across for Medicaid, similar to what Terry was mentioning earlier with Social Security and with Medicare, is that Medicaid is a program you've been paying into your entire lives. Everybody in this room has been paying into Medicaid. Unless you've fallen on hard times and you've had to use their health insurance, like Badger Care, or you've had to use other programs, most of us probably won't take a dime for Medicaid.
Right.
It's a program you've been paying into. When the time comes, when you're suggested to take Social Security, most people don't hesitate. Most people take it. When the time comes to sign up for Medicare, most people don't hesitate. Most people take it. Medicaid is a program for you. It's a program you've prepaid for. So if anyone has any reservations about taking Medicaid, even though they have assets, all of this stuff, the program is there for you. You've already paid for it. I had a woman who was in my office the other day talking about her husband. They were married for 50 years. At age 90, he had a sudden stroke, passed away. We were talking about, well, I'm all alone now. How am I going to pay for my long-term care if that happens? So Medicaid. It says, well, I don't know about Medicaid. Well, think about how much you've paid into it. Think about how much your husband paid into it. How long did your husband work for? 50 years. Did he ever take Medicaid? No. It's there for you. So think about it like that. That's my philosophy on it. If you have a different philosophy, totally okay. I'm totally fine. My father-in-law hates it. And he's a CPA. He hates it. He says, if I can afford it, I want to pay for my own long-term care. Great, Steve. Do that.
But you did already.
Exactly. You did already. And then I keep trying to tell him, you already paid for it, Steve.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's why I save so much money, so I can pay for my own care. Okay, and he's also one of those guys where he'll live forever, even though he doesn't eat healthy, he doesn't walk, he doesn't exercise, he eats like crap. He never has any issues. Have you ever heard the term old man strength?
Yeah.
That's this guy. He's 72 years old. Matt, I need to move my grill. I can do it myself, but my wife told me to ask you for help. He's one of these guys. He'll live forever. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, she walks every day, eats healthy, bad knee, bunions, all the, the whole 9 yards of problems, and nothing makes her more upset. You have a question?
How do you fill out to get to Medicaid?
Good question. Something you can totally do yourself, or you can hire an attorney to do so. Depending on your asset level, I would always recommend hiring an attorney just because we have tremendous experience filling out Medicaid applications. They are a huge pain in the butt. And the amount of things that they ask for records going back 5 years, and they ask for everything. So I'd recommend having a professional help you out. If you are low on funds, then you can ask the ADRC to help you out too. Or it's something you can do on your own. But my big thing, especially with anything like this, ask a professional to do it for you first, because it's going to cost 3 times as much to fix it. Which I learned the hard way when I tried to do my own gutters. And my wife never lets me down, and she didn't pay for any of it. That was all on my dime. Any questions about Medicaid before I move on? Okay. So, let's talk about estate planning in general. What is estate planning? Estate planning comes down to 3 very simple things. Who's in control of my stuff? Who gets to benefit from my stuff? And when? And when we think about estate planning, the normal stuff we think about is my home, my car, my clothes, my jewelry, all that stuff. Yes, that's important. Where does all that stuff go? But what we really have to think about is what's the most important part of your estate? It's you. You're the most important part of your estate. All your stuff will come and go. All your money will come and go. Taking care of you first, and then your stuff, is the most important. That's where a couple documents come in. Anyone ever heard of a power of attorney? Excellent. Hopefully most people have heard of it. So, first document I want to talk about is a power of attorney for finances. So what exactly is it? A power of attorney for finances is a document that you put together that authorizes an agent, so it could be your spouse, could be your child, could be your friend, your neighbor, somebody that you trust, to step into your shoes and act on your behalf in the management of your estate. And examples of certain powers that you can give a power of attorney include accessing bank accounts, signing documents, participating in legal actions, operating a business, handling estate planning matters. Just think of anything and everything you can do, they can do. Now, there's a couple issues that I find with certain powers of attorney for finances. Issue number one, some of them don't go far enough. And what does that mean? They don't go far enough because some of them will just cite the statute, and they'll say, whatever the statute says, that's what I want. But what they don't include is that there's another part of the statute that says, certain things have to be explicitly spelled out in your power of attorney, or else this person can't do it. What's an example? I had a woman who came to me, Matt, my mom's sick, she has dementia, she probably needs to go to a nursing home. I want to set up an asset protection trust, try to protect her assets, get her qualified for Medicaid. I said, awesome idea. Let me look at the power of attorney. You know, your mom's the client, but you're acting as power of attorney, not a problem. Let me look at the power of attorney. I get her power of attorney, nothing on there that says she can set up an asset protection trust or fund an asset protection trust.
Okay.
I go back to her and I say, I can do a revocable trust, but a revocable trust isn't going to save the house. It's not going to save the farm. It's not going to save your mom any money. She's like, well, what do we do? You got to spend your mom's money down until she qualifies, until she gets under $2,000. So the devil is in the details of these documents. I include language on there that most people will never do. Most people will never borrow and encumber on someone's behalf. I put it in there. If you don't have a business, I still include language that you can operate a business. You never know. I always want to err on the side of inclusivity. My powers of attorney are 18 pages long. I want to make sure that everything is included in there, because you just never know. Because when push comes to shove, it has to be in there, or else you can't get it done. So the big thing about having a power of attorney is that it will avoid needing a guardianship. If you're ever incapacitated, or if you ever can't make decisions for yourselves. Guardianships will come up in just a couple of slides, so put a mental pause in that.
Okay.
Any questions about financial power of attorney? Awesome. Okay. Now, power of attorney that most people are probably familiar with, a power of attorney for healthcare. You guys have all heard of that, at least? Okay. Good. Where do you think is the place where most people get a power of attorney for healthcare? Hospital. Okay. What do you think are the problems with that?
It's temporary.
It's temporary, sure. What do you think are the problems with a hospital or a doctor giving you a legal document?
They're not going to explain it.
Sure. Like, what if I told you after here, I'll write you a prescription for anything you want?
Yeah.
Is that, no, I'm not a doctor. And if that were the case, all my friends would just ask for medical marijuana prescriptions. But I can't do that. I don't have the expertise, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the education required. Same thing with the hospital. Also, the biggest problem I see with powers of attorney from the hospital is, what if someone, lying there, beep, 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 oh wait, nurse, I have a question, what should I do? I can't give you any legal advice. Oh, okay, I guess I'll just sign it. That's the biggest problem. You're not in that situation, you come to my office, I explain every single word to you. We go over each thing. I advise you on what choices you should make, what elections you should make. That's the problem with getting them from the hospital. Also, you can get them online. State of Wisconsin does powers of attorneys for healthcare. Those also stink, but they're something. So that's the big thing. what does this document actually do? It authorizes an agent to make healthcare decisions on your behalf.
Yes.
Okay? That's really what it does, and this is if you become incapacitated. While you're alive and doing well, any healthcare decision is up to you. That's the big thing I want to get across. As long as you can formulate a thought, as long as you can get that thought out, that healthcare decision is up to you. This document only kicks in if you're ever incapacitated. If you ever can't make a choice, can't relay that message.
Right.
One of the things I love the most about this is that you put your wishes and detailed instructions. So kind of similar to the power of attorney for finances, you give someone all the power, but you also give them some restrictions and some instructions. And the reason that we do that is because when push comes to shove, you want to make sure your wishes are being followed the entire time. And you don't want the person who you put the power into to second guess a choice and to think, is this what mom would have wanted? Is this what my spouse would have wanted? If you put what you would have wanted in the document, no second guessing. None of that. You can put in there, if I'm ever past the point of no return, let's say I'm incapacitated and I have a terminal condition or a permanent loss of consciousness, here's what I want done with me. I want you to discontinue any life-saving procedures. I want you to take out any feeding tube, take out any hydration tube, write a do not resuscitate, keep me comfortable. The term I like to use, I want you to drug me and then unplug me. That's the term I like to use. And so if I'm ever past the point of no return, that's what I want done with me. And what's wonderful about having that stuff in this document is that if it's your child, if it's your spouse, you just have to relay that to the doctor.
Right.
You don't have to make the choice. The choice has already been made. Mom already made that choice. Spouse already made that choice. Just relay it to the doctor. You can rest easy at night knowing you did the right thing because you did exactly what mom wanted. You did exactly what your spouse wanted, what dad wanted. And so that's one thing that's so powerful about this document. Also, having this document will avoid needing a guardianship. So, I just talked about how awful guardianships are. Let me go into more about how awful guardianships are. Guardianships are awful. No, so, what is a guardianship? A guardianship is a court thing that appoints an individual to act on behalf of someone if that person cannot act on behalf of themselves. Anyone in this room have had to deal with a guardianship? Okay, a few people. Yeah, then you know, more so than most. Guardians can act on behalf of the estate, like a financial power of attorney, or they can act on behalf of the person, like a healthcare power of attorney. What is the problem with guardianships? They can take forever, and when they take forever, they can charge a lot of money. When they take many, many hours, lawyers charge by the hour. So people don't love lawyers that much. However many hours you're in court, however many hours a lawyer's doing something, lawyer's charging you for all that time. Give you an example of the average cost of a guardianship at our office, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. It just takes that long. And if it's not contested, if it is contested, one of our more expensive guardianships this year was $50,000. Wow. Why would people contest a guardianship? Well, you have the in-town kid and you have the out-of-town kid. You know, the in-town kid is always like, oh, I know what mom wants. I'm the in-town kid. I'm the favorite child. Out-of-town kid says, oh, well, no, mom told me 20 years ago, you know, that she wants this. Well, no, mom told me she wants this. Fighting. I'm not putting you in charge of mom. You don't know anything. You just happen to live close by. I'm the smart one. I moved to Denver. Like, you know, something like that. And so that's the fighting. And what's interesting is that they don't fight over spite for each other. They fight over what they think mom would have wanted. And then $50,000 of the litigation later, hopefully we get a guardian appointed. And then here's one of my biggest problems with guardianships. It's all managed by the court. So all the control is out of the family. When you're drafting a power of attorney for healthcare or a power of attorney for finances, you tell me who you want in there. I don't ask you what their past was like. I don't care. You tell me who you trust the most. If the individual you appointed, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your child, they had a felony in the past, I don't care. I don't care if they had a DUI 10 years ago. I don't care if they filed for bankruptcy 9 times. Couldn't care less. I don't care if they're, bad at golf. I don't care if they're a Bears fan. I don't care about any of that. Okay, we all have our flaws. So, none of that matters. But to a court, everything except for the Bears fan part, that matters. Because the court looks at the individual who's put up as guardian, the court says, Do you have a felony? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to put you in control of someone's decisions. Do you have a bankruptcy? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to put you in control of someone's finances. Everything has to get approved by the court. If you do it on your own terms, nothing has to get approved. You just tell me how to spell their name. That's all it is. It's very simple. And so that's my biggest issue. And if you don't have anybody, let's say you do have the son who had that DUI a couple of years ago, and you do have the daughter that had that bankruptcy a few years ago, and you have nobody else in your family, then what happens? We need a corporate guardian. And for $300 an hour, they'll pick up the phone and they'll handle anything you want. But you have to go through them. Imagine having to go through a third party to get anything done on your own family's behalf. Yeah, it stinks. All this can be avoided. 2 very simple documents. Power of attorney for finances, power of attorney for healthcare. Very simple documents, very inexpensive documents, saves you a whole mess of time. So if anybody in this room doesn't have these, in my opinion, that's the bare minimum for everybody over the age of 18. That's another thing. Once you have a kid turns 18, you don't have the automatic right to act for them anymore. You don't have the automatic right to look at their healthcare records anymore. If anyone's familiar with HIPAA, HIPAA's a beast. HIPAA does not mess around. They don't play games, nor does the court. So anyone over the age of 18, power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for finances, that's the bare minimum, in my opinion, when it comes to estate planning. Don't put your family through this if anything happens to you. So, let's talk about trusts. Anyone here has heard of revocable trust? Anyone heard the term before? Wonderful. Excellent. So, let's talk about revocable trust. I love revocable trusts because revocable trusts get you out of probate. That is my favorite thing. But we'll talk about more things. What is it? What exactly is a revocable trust? It's a document that I create, and it holds your assets while you are living. That's why you may have heard the term living trust as well. What does it do? Distribute your assets per your instructions after you've passed away. And what does it also do? It provides detailed instructions on how to manage your assets throughout your life in the event of incompetency, incapacity, or death. Big one, it avoids probate. And then lastly, you have full control and access to all of your stuff. People always ask me, well, Matt, what do I need a trust for? I don't have that much, or I have all of my accounts are joint, or they're transfer on death, payable on death. That's going to avoid probate, right? The answer is yes. If you have accounts that are transfer on death, payable on death, designated beneficiaries, those will avoid probate. Here's the problem. We don't know what the world is going to look like the day that we pass away. We don't know that the day that we pass away, if your goal is to leave everything to a spouse, we don't know where that spouse is going to be. We don't know if that spouse is going to be in a nursing home. We don't know if that spouse is going to be filing for bankruptcy. If you're leaving things to your children, we don't know if the kids are going to be over the age of 18. We don't know if they're going to be getting divorced, if they have an addiction, if they're getting sued, if they're going through a bankruptcy. Any of these situations, which people shouldn't have direct access to money, we just don't know if this is going to happen. If something like that concerns you, trust is a wonderful thing. The reason being, trusts don't get divorced, trusts don't have bankruptcies, trusts, although can get sued, don't get sued like people do, as often as they do. Trusts don't have toxic relationships, trusts don't have addictions. Trusts don't have any of these issues, like people can. So if something like that is a concern of yours, then it might be a good idea to think about a trust. Also, trusts are guaranteed to get you out of probate. You may be asking, what is this little red wagon doing here? Good. Anybody have one of these growing up? Little red wagon? Good. So, little red wagon you had growing up, what kind of stuff did you put in it?
My dolls.
Yeah, exactly. So like when you're 5 years old, anything that means anything in the world to you, you put in that little red wagon. Your dolls, your action figures, maybe a sibling, maybe some sticks, super soakers, whatever. So think of this little red wagon as your trust, okay? As I'm going on through life, I have all my stuff in boxes. So this box is my checking account, savings account, my house, my life insurance, all of my different accounts. I have an annuity. Let's say, I have the place up north on a very small lake. All of my accounts, all of my stuff. If it's not in my wagon, it's in my name. I'm carrying it with me. Carrying it like this or on my shoulders, I'm carrying it around with me throughout my entire life. If I ever die, or become incapacitated, what happens to all my stuff? Going throughout life, everything falls on the ground. If I become incapacitated and that happens, hopefully I have a good power of attorney for finances. They can come along, pick all that stuff up, figure out what to do with it. If I have instructions in there, if I have a well-written document. If I died and that happens, who picks it up? State of Wisconsin. State of Wisconsin says, hey, you didn't have a rule book in place in the form of a trust. We have a set of rules. It's called probate. Doesn't work for everybody, but it's in place for everybody. Anybody play Monopoly growing up? So one of the things I love about Monopoly, and let me know if this was a situation for you guys too, there's instructions on the inside of the box. I don't think I ever followed them. Okay, here's you guys did too, okay. And so the question I would always ask when I go to a friend's house, you guys want to play Monopoly? Sure. How do you play? What are your rules? What's your family's rules? And the reason you did that is because that's what was most fun for you and your family. Nobody did the instructions on the inside of the box, but think of those instructions on the inside of the box like probate. They might work for some people. They probably don't work for everybody. Most people had their own rules, because that's what worked best for them and their family. The way that things currently are now, if I'm carrying these boxes and I pass away, everything goes to my wife, which is fine. That's my plan now. Pretty good. Everything goes to my wife. Let's say my wife predeceases me. Where does everything go? Everything goes to my mom. I mentioned my mom earlier. She's kind of a pain in my butt. I love her, but she's difficult. My mom has a new husband, and they live in Mexico together. And she doesn't need any more of my money. She's got plenty of his money that she's trying to spend down. So, is that what I want? No, I got 5 nieces and nephews that need to go to college one day. I'd rather go to them. But Wisconsin's rule book says, Matt, if you die, your wife predeceases you, all your money is going to your mom. Great. So all of my money is going right in my mom's pocket and right out to the Hard Rock Casino, where she loves spending most of her time. If my mom predeceases me, then what happened? It all goes to my brother. Oh, my brother who's a pharmacist in Boca Raton, Florida. Does he need any of my money? Nope. So as you can see, Wisconsin has a rule book. It might not work for most families. It may work for yours, it may not. And so in order to guarantee that things happen the way you want, you have your own rule book. And that rule book is the trust. So what if instead of me having my stuff on my shoulders, I put it in my little red wagon? Then, as I'm going on throughout life, all I have to do is carry the handle. So I'm going on throughout the sandbox of life, carrying this handle. If I die or become incapacitated, what happens? I just drop the handle. My boxes are fine. They don't ever touch the ground. Attached to this handle is a set of instructions that say, if Matt ever drops this handle, here's who can pick it up, and here's what I want you to do with the boxes. If Matt dropped this handle because he died, his wife Stacy will continue holding the handle. Not a problem. They're holding it together. If they both drop it, Matt's brother Andrew, the pharmacist in Boca Raton, he will take those boxes, he will split it evenly between Matt's nieces and nephews. It's not on me, kids. I have a dog, but he doesn't need any money. So, that's what will happen. And that's my set of instructions. That's what I want. And so, too, if we become incapacitated, my brother can take over, manage the assets. Maybe we come out of our incapacity. Maybe we don't. But these boxes never touch the ground. And if these boxes never touch the ground, there is never a probate. Any questions about the revocable trust? All right, great. So let's talk about asset protection trust. Anybody heard the term irrevocable trust now? I'm sure a lot of people have. People think it's the boogeyman. Every time I talk to people about it, they don't like it. And I say, why don't you like it? Oh, because I Googled something once, and they told me not to like it. So let me tell you why I love it. I love asset protection trust. Think of irrevocable trust as a big thing. It's a big, think of it like cars. Anyone who ever tells you, you don't need an irrevocable trust, that's like saying, you don't need a car. Well, there's a million different types of cars. Yeah, exactly. So, this is a type of car that we use very often, especially for asset protection purposes, which is why I call it that. What does it do? It provides protection of your assets throughout your life from predators, creditors, lawsuits, and the big one, $9,200 a month or $12,000 a month in nursing homes. It has the same mechanisms as a revocable trust. Everything in there gets you out of probate. And you also retain full use, enjoyment, and control over all of your property. If this is an asset protection trust and my house is in here, I can still sell it. If I have stocks in here, I can still buy and sell stocks. Although I shouldn't. I'd probably hire him to do so for me. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But I can still buy and sell stocks. I can buy assets in here. I can sell assets in here. I have full control over everything in here. That's one of the things I love the most. And while it's in here, the day I put it in there, the day I transfer title from my house into my asset protection trust, off the table for lawsuits, off the table for creditors, anything like that. Anyone want to guess how many lawsuits there were in the U.S. last year? I'll give you a hint. There's 7 zeros in the number. And the first number was a 4. 40 million. So if anyone in this room says, I'll never get sued, chances are, a lot of us will get sued at some point in our lives. And the reason being is because there's 1.3 million attorneys. We just love to sue people. We just love it. Also, people love suing people. If any of you are retired and ever bored, go down to Milwaukee County Courthouse on Mondays in the small claims room. It's called Pro Se Monday. And you'll see a bunch of the most fun disputes you'll ever see. People like, oh, you egressed onto my lawn. And using just throwing out legal words. Objection. It's you weren't even called on. So it's really funny. But people love suing each other because in order to sue someone, all you really need is $130. You don't need a lot of green. Anyone can sue anybody. It's really fun. So because people get sued all the time, you might want to think about protecting assets if that ever happens. And so if you ever think, I'll never get sued, you're probably wrong. So let's talk about wills. Everyone's heard of wills, right? Okay, perfect. What does a will actually do? A will names who gets your stuff after you die. A will only controls what's in your personal name. So, back to my example earlier, I have these boxes on my shoulders. The will controls what happens to everything. I put these boxes into my wagon, and I die with a will. I don't have any boxes on my shoulders. Will's not controlling anything. So will only controls the boxes on your shoulders when you pass away. And here's the thing that I don't like the most about wills. Must. A will must go through probate. Star that, underline it, bold it, italicize, anything you can do. A will must go through probate. Because anything in your personal name is going through probate. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if you have accounts that are transfer on death, payable on death, designated beneficiary, they're going to pass outside of probate. If you have a house with your name on it, if it's not transfer on death deed, that house is going to probate. If you have an account, personal account, just your name on it, over $50,000, that account's going to probate. So, probates are a pain in the butt. I'll just give you a brief thing about probate. The reason I included this GIF is because probate feels like Leonardo DiCaprio throwing $100 bills in the water. That's what it feels like for a lot of people. And what you don't see is under that is an attorney catching every single $100 bill. Okay? And paying for their kid to go to Marquette. So,
It takes a lot of time.
what is probate? Probate is a legal process that can take up to a year if it's not contested. If it is contested, congratulations, we're in full-blown litigation, maybe 2 years before something gets cleaned up.
Yes.
The control is with the court and not with your family. All of the control is out of your hands. All of your information is public. If you know anyone who died recently who's going through a probate, look them up. Anyone familiar with CCAP? Anybody heard that website? If you don't know it, it's the Wisconsin Circuit Court Access. What a lot of women are doing in my generation is they look a guy up on CCAP before they go on a date with him, just to make sure he hasn't been arrested. Most of the time they come across bad information. But CCAP's Wisconsin Circuit Court Access, everything's on there. So if you want to look up your neighbor who passed away, and you want to see exactly how much their stuff was worth and who their creditors are, all that stuff's online. If you want to keep your stuff private, you should probably want to avoid probate. Here's the big thing. They are expensive. ARP did a study, and according to ARP, average probate costs between 5 to 20% of your gross estate. They don't care if you are mortgaged to the teeth, if you have a ton of debt. They don't care. 5 to 20% of your gross estate. Think in your heads about what is my house, all of my accounts, IRAs, 401ks, what's all that worth? take 10% of that, you pass away without a trust or without things set up, that's money not going to your loved ones. And a year later, going through all this aggravation. So
it's funny is I just looked myself up in CCAP because my mom went through probate, and I was wondering why all these idiots were contacting me trying to get the house all the time.
For sure.
It's because I'm sitting out on probate.
For sure.
How silly is that?
For sure. Yeah. The Jews have a term for silliness. It's called mishigas. You've ever heard that term? Probate is textbook mishigas. So definitely avoidable. Now, any questions about any of the estate planning terms that we went over? No questions? Okay, excellent. So if you can get out that grid that I included in your folders, we're going to go over the story of Paul and Wendy.
So you can have like an asset protection trust without a will? Is that?
So great question. So what will happen is that if you have a trust, then what I will also include with it is called a pour-over will. And what a pour-over will means is that if there's anything in your personal name at the time of your passing, it will pour over into your trust, and then your trust will distribute it. So think of a regular will where you have beneficiaries. For a pour-over will, the sole beneficiary is the trust. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to putz around with the probate. Most of the reason that people come to me and they say they want a trust because they don't want to deal with probate. And so with a pour-over will, we're going to work together. We're going to get everything retitled, put that in their wagon. This will only come into fruition if they forget something, they get some sort of a settlement check after they pass away, they get an inheritance from a long-lost relative in their name after they pass away, something like that. Then the pour-over will pour it into the trust.
And are like assets easy to adjust? Like say for example, all of a sudden I inherit $100,000 from somebody and I want to change my asset protection trust.
Sure.
Is it easy enough to...
Well, I guess what would you want to change about the trust?
Maybe to add the money or the...
Oh, sure. Yeah, you don't have to change the trust at all to add the money. So when we design the trust, we design it just like this. Okay. And then if you want to add more to it, just put another box on there.
Okay.
So if you have an account currently, let's say this box is just an account through BMO Harris, that's your high yield savings account. Getting 4% interest, you're doing a great job. You already have a ton of money in there, you get inheritance, you just deposit it in this account. This account is in the name of your asset protection trust. Just deposit the money in the account.
Okay.
Boom. So, great question. Any other questions before we go into Paul and Wendy? All right, so let's meet Paul and Wendy. I swear they're the same age. Paul just looks great for his age because he's a planner. Wendy is a waiter, and so that's why she looks like 10 years older. But they are the same person. And they are so the same person, they have the exact same background. What are the chances? They both live in Mequon. They are both married with 2 children. They both have a home, a 401k/IRA, checking and savings accounts, and they're both VPs at Grafton High School. One of the things that I want to point out to you, look in the upper right-hand corner. It might be difficult to see. That's why I included the sheet on there. Upper right-hand corner is going to show their net worth and how things go down, things come up. That's going to be a really good illustration to show throughout the story how much things cost. Thank you. And so, let's see what happens. At age 50, both Paul and Wendy's first child starts college at UW-Milwaukee. They begin to get worried about what would happen if something were to happen to them. I have a kid in college. What if something happens to me? Maybe we should think about getting our estate planning done. Paul, being the planner that he is, him and his wife go to an estate planning attorney, and the estate planning attorney asks them, what are your concerns? Well, right now my concerns are, if anything happens to me, I want to avoid probate, I want to make sure the money is managed for my kids. My kids are young, I don't want them to see this money until they're at least 30, if something happens to us. I want them to make sure they graduate from college. I want to put all these stipulations in there. Not a problem. Paul's attorney says, you know what, I think at this point you probably don't need an asset protection trust. How does a revocable trust sound? Sounds good. So he hooks them up with a revocable trust, a pour-over will that I mentioned earlier, healthcare power of attorney, and a power of attorney for finances. Excellent. What does Wendy do? Wendy goes, Paul, are you nuts? You're going to pay $5,000 for estate planning? Are you crazy? Wendy takes that money and Wendy goes on vacation to Paris. Because she didn't think it was important now. She's like, I'm fine. I'm healthy. My kids are young. I'm going to be fine. Let's see how it happens. 18 years go by, whole life goes by, tragedy strikes. Paul and Wendy's parents pass away after being in a nursing home for several years, and Paul and Wendy's parents lived on adjoining lake houses in which they leave to Paul and Wendy respectively. That also a little bit of money. They would have inherited a lot more stuff, but Paul and Wendy's parents were not planners like Paul is, and they had a probate, and they also were in a nursing home for a little bit before they passed away. And so, because of that, Paul and Wendy end up inheriting about $200,000 worth of assets, the vast majority of that being the lake house up north. And this lake house, keep that in the back of your head, this will play a factor in the story later on. Just 1 year later, tragedy strikes again. Paul and Wendy's spouses pass away suddenly, and they leave everything to Paul and Wendy respectively. What happened to Paul's spouse? Her assets were titled into the trust. All of her boxes were in there. They were moving along. She dropped the handle. The handle didn't even hit the ground, because Paul's also holding onto the handle. Nothing effectively changes. They have a funeral. Nothing effectively changes. Wendy's husband, who's shifty as heck because he married a waiter, a woman who waits all the time, he had everything in his personal name. He had no transfer on death, no payable on death, no designated beneficiaries, no nothing. He was just trying to hide all his money from Wendy. And what happens? He goes for a year-long probate. After a year-long probate, she finally gets the rest of his money. And you'll see on the form exactly what the probate ended up costing. Age 70. Both Paul and Wendy begin collecting Social Security, which I know is early. This is what they decided to do. Thank you, Terry. So they both start to collect Social Security early, and they start slowing down in their retirement. What does Paul do? Paul, being the planner that he is, he says, you know what? I'm not working anymore. I'm collecting Social Security, slowing down. I want to go back to my attorney to talk about protecting my assets. I'm alone now. What if something happens to me? My kids can't take care of me. What if I need long-term care? Paul goes back to his attorney and gets his estate planning updated. His attorney also sets him up with an asset protection trust. And his attorney transfers Paul's home and that cottage up north into the asset protection trust. His attorney does that for him. What his attorney also does, which is something that I love doing, and especially I love working with people like Charlie, I love working with financial advisors to talk about here's what we can save now, here's what we can save over time, here's what we think this is going to cost, here's what your burn rate is throughout retirement, here's what your investments are doing. Let's figure out how much money you need now. We'll put that in a revocable trust, and let's figure out how much money you can start protecting. We'll put that in the asset protection trust. So he leaned into, he had a big meeting with his advisor. Yesterday, I had 3 meetings with clients and their financial advisors to have this exact conversation. I love having that conversation. I love all working as a team. I also love getting CPAs involved because there's tax implications of doing certain strategies. So I love having a whole team approach with this, and that's exactly what Paul did. What does Wendy do? Wendy goes, Paul, are you nuts? Another $5,000? I'm going to go back to Paris. So Wendy goes back to Paris, even though she's 70, and she's got hip problems, and she decides to go back to Paris instead of getting anything done, because she said, that's too expensive. So let's see what happens next. Age 75. Both Paul and Wendy fall and break a hip. Paul has an advanced Medicare plan because Paul was doing great, didn't need to have Medicare gap, as he should have, it looks like, but Paul's got the whole shebang Medicare plan. And one thing that Terry may have mentioned, Medicare will also pay for some nursing home care too. If any of you are familiar with that, there's a whole lot of caveats, a whole lot of rules involved, but they will pay for some nursing home care. And so Paul's Medicare Advantage plan helps cover his hospital stay and some care. Same thing, Wendy's original Medicare plan helps cover hospital stay and some care. But if you can imagine, Wendy not being the planner that she is, she just has original Medicare, which is what Terry told us not to do. Wendy didn't listen. Wendy has original Medicare, no other supplement, no advantage, no gap. So with Paul's plan, he's able to get the medication that he needs, go see his doctors, gets physical therapy, gets the equipment, all that stuff is covered, low copays, low deductibles, all of that. Wendy pays for everything primarily out of pocket or has to pay the co-insurance that Terry mentioned earlier. So, Let's see what happens next. At age 80, both Paul and Wendy begin showing signs of dementia. Shortly thereafter, they are deemed incapacitated. I did this presentation at a senior center one time, and when this slide came up, everyone started laughing. I said, "What's funny?" They're like, "Oh, we're all 80 in this room." I was like, ooh. So it's weird. This happens. I had a couple who came, and this really puts everything in perspective for me. I had a couple who came in the other day. They were both 70 years old. They've been married since they were 22. So married forever. The gentleman is doing just fine. Woman, deep in the throes of dementia. Talking to her, I just looked at her eyes. I could tell that there was just nothing there. She was very calm, but didn't know what the heck was going on at all. I asked, so, what did she do when she was working? She was an attorney, and she argued in front of the Supreme Court. Wow. Clearly an incredibly bright woman. And so, it made me think two things. One, I've only been married for 4 years. I can imagine what he's going through. If that ever happens to my wife, where one day I might wake up and she might not know who I am. And then number two, doesn't matter what you do with your life, doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter. It can affect anybody. And so that's why we always have to cherish what we have when we can. And we always have to plan ahead, because it can happen to any of us. The sad reality is 1 in 3 of us will have some sort of memory issues at some point in our lives. And so, what happens? So age 80, they're deemed incapacitated. And what happens to Paul? Paul, who has a power of attorney, who is his son at this time, Paul's son steps into his shoes, acts for him when he needs to. Paul needs money out of his account. Paul's son does it. Paul needs something signed. Paul's son does it. Anything Paul needs to get done, Paul's son does it. Paul's son also starts working with a couple of outfits in the area to look at memory care facilities. Paul's son knows that he can't take care of his dad. Neither can Paul's daughter. And Dad knew that was going to be the case. There's a couple of outfits in the area that, for no charge to you, will tour you around facilities, will have a ton of information. You can call them at any time. They have a relationship with all the facilities in the area. They know exactly how much they cost. They know if they require private pay, if they take Medicaid. They know everything about that. The only way they make money is once they place you in a facility. That's how they make money. But other than that, their services are free to you. So if you have any questions about that, just come find me afterwards. So Paul's son works with this place. What happens to Wendy? Wendy doesn't have a POA, remember? Because she went to Paris twice, and she thought it was too expensive. So Wendy has no POA, so what happens? Wendy needs a guardianship. Luckily, it's not contested. Wendy's guardianship ended up costing her family around $10,000. There's all the money that Paul paid for his entire estate plan. Wendy's one guardianship. Okay? Age 81. Both Paul and Wendy are placed in the same nursing home for memory care, and it costs $12,000 a month. The nursing home requires 2 years of private pay before Medicaid can pick up the tab. So if you were wondering earlier, why have an asset protection trust and a revocable trust? Reason being is because in Wisconsin is a really weird thing where a lot of the nursing homes will require you to privately pay for a certain amount of time before they allow Medicaid to pick up the tab.
That's right.
It's very strange. Wisconsin is very unique in that sense. A lot of states don't have that requirement, but Wisconsin does. And so with that, that's why it's so important, especially to work with a financial advisor, to say, okay, so what Paul's financial advisor said is, we're going to assume it's going to cost $12,000 a year, $12,000, 24 months, $288,000. Let's put $288 grand in an account in your revocable trust, save everything else. Just in case you need to go to a place that requires 2 years of private pay at that much. And ended up working out well for Paul. Paul goes to a place, $12,000 per month, requires 2 years of private pay. He saved the correct amount of money. So, what does he do? He goes to the place, starts privately paying each month. His son cuts a check from an account in the name of his revocable trust to the nursing home every single month for 24 months straight. Wendy's child does the exact same thing, except Wendy and Paul are not going to have the same fate. Age 83, after that 2 years of private pay is up, both Paul and Wendy can utilize Medicaid to pay if they are eligible. That's a big if. If they are eligible. Is Paul eligible?
Yes.
Yes. Paul's eligible because the only thing he had in his personal name or in his revocable trust was $288,000. After that was exhausted, everything else is in his asset protection trust. It's been there for more than 5 years. Paul, in his personal name, has under $2,000. Paul's eligible for Medicaid. What's the problem with Wendy? Wendy has to continue to privately pay. She didn't have all of her money in an asset protection trust. All of her money's in her personal name. She has to privately pay. To help pay for her care, she's forced to sell her lake house. Medicaid is a wonderful thing because they allow you to keep your home. They allow you to keep a car. Do you think Medicaid allows you to keep a lake house? No, but they do allow you to keep that house in Aspen. I'm just kidding, obviously. They do. They don't allow you to keep a vacation home. That's silly. But they allow you to keep your actual home. So, she didn't have to sell her home, but we'll see what happens to her home in just a little bit. Anyone think she keeps her home at the end of the day?
No.
Good, yeah, you're all right. But, age 86, after almost 5.5 years in a nursing home, what happens to Paul? Paul's still on Medicaid. Nothing changes. All the money in Paul's asset protection trust, still good to go. What happens to Wendy? Wendy has to spend down all of her money until she's down to $2,000. Then she qualifies for Medicaid. Can you zoom into the upper right-hand corner? And I'm going to change slides, so if you can just keep it there. Look, age 83. Can you zoom in? Look what Wendy has. $772,000. 3 years later. That's how fast this stuff can go. That's how fast $12,000 a month can go. Wendy lost $770,000 in just 3.5 years.
Yeah.
It's insane. And this is all from the person who said, $10,000 to get your estate planning done? That's expensive. So keep in mind, yes, it's expensive at the time. I'm not going to doubt that. And I don't charge $10,000. But I just want to let you know there are some attorneys that do. And I just want to use that as an example. $10,000 then, and you get to keep $902,000, or nothing then, and you lose all of it. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. So Wendy spends all of her money until she's down to under $2,000. Age 91. Just staying in a nursing home for 10 years, they both passed away. Anybody know the average time people spend in a nursing home? It's two different things. It's either 0 to 3 months, because they're there to kind of on the way out, or it's 5+ years. We have a client who's been in a nursing home now. She's coming on her 22nd year in a nursing home. Because here's the thing, they provide good care. They keep people alive. They keep you engaged. If you've ever visited one, these people are active the whole time. They're playing bingo, while watching TV, while talking to a grandson. Like, they're doing just so much stuff. They're keeping everyone engaged. And so people are living longer, and they're living longer in nursing homes that are incredibly expensive.
Does Medicaid also cover like assisted living and stuff?
They do. Okay. You know, what Medicaid doesn't cover in Wisconsin, which I think is stupid, at-home care.
Really?
Medicaid does not cover at-home care. I think it's so stupid because it's cheaper and it's better for people. But we work with the laws we got, you know. Age 91, after being in a home for 10 years, they pass away. What happens to Paul? Paul leaves the rest of his money to his family. Turns out to be just over $900,000, which includes his home in Mequon and his lake house on a very small lake up north. Since his homes were in the Asset Protection Trust, Medicaid cannot come after them after he passes away. Anybody ever heard of asset recovery from Medicaid? So if you haven't, Medicaid are the biggest gangsters on the block. If you cost them $1, they're going to look for reimbursement later on. And so what Medicaid does, they have a program called asset recovery. You rack up a giant bill on their behalf, they're going to say, we need to get reimbursed. If it's in an asset protection trust, off the table. They can't. So, then what do you think happens to Wendy? After being in a nursing home for 4.5 years, since she racks up just a giant bill, Medicaid wants to be reimbursed for that. What does Medicaid see that she has asset-wise? Her home. So, what happens? They put a lien on her property, and at the probate court, they take her house, foreclose on it, sell it, get the proceeds. Immediately after death, Paul's son, who's the successor trustee, divvies up Paul's estate for his instructions in the trust, and he settles everything within a short period of time. He then also makes snow angels and all the $100 bills that he gets from Paul's estate. What happens to Wendy's family? Wendy's family gets nothing. Because the probate court, because Medicaid instituted a probate action, takes the home at the probate court. Wendy spent all of her money in the nursing home. Wendy's family gets nothing. So, big thing I want to conclude with. Because Paul planned early and got his affairs in order, he was prepared for the things that life threw at him. Okay? Wendy didn't plan at all. She kept pushing everything off until it was too late. But the big point I want to get across is the biggest impact is not on yourself, but it's on the people you leave behind. That's why I end the story with what happens to Paul's son and Wendy's child. I didn't end the story here with them dying, because what most people tell me all the time, oh, I'll be dead, I don't care. Well, no. Do you care about the loved ones?
Right.
Yes.
Do you care about the ones you leave behind? That's why I end it with this. Because in my personal situation, I know my father loved me, but he still set me and my brother up for failure.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I remember many wonderful things about him. That's one of the bad things about him that I'll never forget. People will also never forget how easy you made it for them. And so that's why I love ending it talking about Paul and Wendy's children. Because that's the biggest impact. All of this estate planning that you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the loved ones that you leave behind. And so think about it like that. So easiest question of the night, who would you rather be in this scenario, Paul or Wendy? Oh, exactly. Any questions? Yes?
So, let's say your parents pass away. Does their debt automatically go to the children?
No. What will happen is your parents pass away. If they have a trust, there's instruction in the trust to say, pay all of our debts out of the money in the trust. If they don't have a trust and there's a probate, the creditors have a certain amount of time to make a claim against the estate, and then those claims all have to get paid first.
Yes.
Okay, so if they have nothing.
Yeah, they have nothing. Yeah, you can't get water off a stone at that point. That's what it would be like for me. I have a lot of student loan debt, so if anything happened to me, yeah, good luck. No other creditors get anything from me. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Too, you also, like, not only you have to wait so long for the creditors to be able to contact you and tell you that there's debt, and there's a long proceeding. That's why it takes a year. Even if your parents don't have, like, maybe they got $10,000 in the bank, it still takes a whole year because you have to wait for the creditors to say if you owe money or not, and you have to have communication with them all. It's a big pain.
Yeah, think of it like an open house for your assets. It's an open house. Open house is from 9 to 5. You have to leave it open that entire time. And anybody has any time to make a claim.
And I was just going to say, when my mom and dad did probate for my mom 2 years ago, and she had like a tiny little house and $30,000, and it took that long, and it also took me lots of hours. They actually will pay the person who does the probate if you want them to. I didn't accept that, but it was like 47 emails just to her creditors, and then about 50 emails to the attorney and a couple conversations. So,
yeah, I'll give you an example of a probate that was stupid expensive. We had a client, her mom had $150,000. Home was worth about $100,000, $50,000 in cash. Not a big probate. The reason it got so expensive is because the home, turns out, was fraudulently transferred before mom died to somebody else. Home was fraudulently transferred. We said, oh, did you deed this home to this person? No, I don't remember mom ever doing that. Oh, so what happened? We had to hire a handwriting expert to determine that the deed was fraudulently conveyed to the tune of $5,000. Handwriting expert, all of this litigation, side litigation to include anything with creditors, $150,000 estate, $45,000 worth of legal fees for a probate.